going to talk about some smaller market teams that are thriving, that are
Mm-hmm.
actually prospering right now. And one of them just gets some major great news back with Paolo Banchero coming
Mm-hmm.
back to
He's
the NBA.
back. He's back, baby. Back in Orlando. I'll be honest with you, Jerry. I was looking at the stats for this team, the Magic. Paul has only played 7 games this year. That's crazy. I didn't realize it was such a small number, but
Yeah, yeah.
they were holding down the fort while he was gone, to say the least.
And you just gave the fans a little preview into the notes here. They were fourth in the Eastern Conference when he went down with the oblique injury. He comes
Guess
back
what?
and they're still in fourth.
Still fourth. Still fourth. Yep.
That goes to show the depth around this team. Obviously, Franz was off to a hot start. Possibly could have made his All-Star bid as well if he didn't
Absolutely.
also tear
Mm-hmm.
his shit, which would happen to be his oblique as well. So,
Yep.
but we'll stick to Paulo. First 2 games back, drops 34 points, 7 boards, 3 assists. Comes back in game number 2 against the Sixers, 20 points, 8 boards, 6 assists in his first 2 games back. So,
Yep. He's good.
rolling.
He's a
He was
good player.
We'll throw out a little nugget here too. He has the third most 25-5 games before turning 23, only behind LeBron and Giannis. So
He
Paolo
would have
is
had more of those games if he was healthy. You know
absolutely
that for
probably
sure.
would have broke the record or
I was
whatever.
gonna say he'd be close. He'd be close to it.
Paolo's a young star in the league. We already knew this, but just tell me what you've seen from him in these first 2 games back, and as well as what you've seen from the team since he's been gone.
I mean, I would say that he's a difference maker. He is a difference maker. I don't want to make it sound like he isn't, but it is astonishing that they were able to stay afloat while he was gone, and not even just him. They've had injuries. Wagner, like we mentioned, his was a little bit more recent than Paulo's. Just a few injuries, like smaller injuries here and there. Even his brother Mo Wagner, he tore his ACL. I'm not laughing at the ACL. I'm just laughing at how unlucky they've been with
Irony.
injuries this year. The irony of it, right? And it's like similar injuries. They're all similar injuries. So Paolo Banchero being back, I think it really just gives the Magic a lot of possibilities of what they can do this season. Because with him there, Franz not being there definitely hurts. But him being there, I think it's like, okay, now this is a team that I can see winning a playoff matchup. This is a team that I can see not only staying in that 4th spot, but hey, maybe competing for that number 3 in the Eastern Conference. You never know. Hey, if they went this long without Paulo and stayed competitive, if bring him back in, I don't think it's crazy to think that they can move higher up in the rankings. But I think it comes down to great coaching, great depth. It really is like a next man up type of mentality on that team. They're filled with a bunch of great young players that are willing to step up when need be, and that's what we saw during Paulo's absence. So I mean, I think this team is really well constructed. I think the sky's the limit now that Paulo's back. I don't know, is Franz Wagner out for the rest of the year? Is that
He will likely be back in March or April-ish is probably what the
okay. Yeah, it says that he hasn't been cleared for contact yet. The head coach said no contact at all, no conditioning pieces yet. So if he does come back, it will probably be later in the season, maybe right around before playoff time. But yeah, I mean, the Magic, they're a good team. I think they're a fun team to watch. With Paul back now, like I said, they're even better. So I'm curious to see where they move in the rankings now that Paul is back.
Yeah, I think I could just echo all the same type of sentiments, of course, but I think the main thing that I noticed from Orlando, especially in his absence, I still been watching like the Orlando Magic brand of basketball. It's just it's fun, it's gritty. It seems like they just go out there.
They're developing and building a culture right now.
And to me, it kind of feels like OKC East a little bit, right? Where they have all these good young players that kind of make a lot of sense in a lot of different places on the floor. Like, no, they don't have an MVP candidate when like in SGA, like Paolo when he's healthy. No, he's not that kind of player. But in my opinion, Paolo's probably the second most dominant player in the NBA today. I think right behind Giannis because it's a bruising style of basketball. So yeah, when he's there and he's available, the Magic are a threat. I think they are. We'll get to this later, but I think they are a dark horse team out east where they can make a lot of noise and probably upset some teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers. Maybe they get a rematch. Maybe even the Boston Celtics, who they match up pretty well with.
Sure.
If they're healthy. So it's going to be interesting. But the rest of the guys is Cole Anthony, Anthony Black, Goga Bitadze. Like
Yeah.
these aren't guys that are going to be pictured on ESPN's headlines or
Yeah. They're
any
not
sort
all-star
of.
players,
No,
but
these
they're
are,
very good role players
you know what? They are all-star players in their actual
in
role.
their roles on
And
that team. Absolutely.
that's what makes it fun to watch, especially if you're really just, I guess, degenerates like how we kind of are.
Just basketball fans. We're
I,
just a fan of good basketball.
I sit on League Pass and I watch the Magic and Wizards play and be like, wow.
Hey,
Like, you know,
fuck! If you're watching the Wizards play on League Pass, you got to really enjoy the team that they're going up against, because that is borderline torture right there watching a Wizards
hey
game.
man, I'm sorry, Wizards. I didn't have to throw you out.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
But this is just me headlining like, yo, the Magic have played big basketball when, despite their two biggest stars, their two biggest names being out of the lineup. So Orlando definitely has a case, like you mentioned, to cover some ground on that 3 seed, which is the New York Knicks. They're about 4 games back. They just have to string some wins together. And hey, your star player came back, and I mentioned the first 2 games that he had. He dropped 34 in his return. So it's safe to say that, he's not rusty. I think he's ready to play. The rehab is good.
Yep.
The oblique is fine. He's back healthy, ready to lead his team. So I'm excited for what Orlando's going to look like. But the second follow-up question here that I kind of spoiled a little bit. Do you think this is the biggest dark horse out in the Eastern Conference or even in the NBA? I think we kind of mentioned some last week, especially out west, since all the movers and shakers and how fluid the Western Conference is. The Lakers could suddenly pop off.
Right.
The Clippers might go on a run or something. But out east or in the NBA, if you want to answer that, is Orlando probably the scariest dark horse we got?
I definitely think Orlando in the Eastern Conference is one of the biggest sleepers. I'll be honest with you, I still feel like New York. I know they're the 3rd seed, but I still feel like New York hasn't been in that conversation with teams like Cleveland and Boston. And it took a little bit for New York to get things going, but I mean, they're only 2.5 games behind Boston for the 2 seed right now. They're 26-14. Everything's clicking for them, but like genuine sleepers, I think I'd classify the Magic over the Knicks, of course, because Paolo being out. I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't be. I mean, again, they stay competitive without their biggest stars. And, if the playoffs were starting, I wouldn't have faith in the Magic to get past a team in the playoffs as well with that roster. But with Paolo back, again, like I said earlier, I think the sky can be the limit. I don't think there's really would I put my money on them in a matchup against like Boston or Cleveland and New York? I don't know, but I do think that they would give those teams a run for their money, or at least make it very difficult for them. They made it to Game 7 last year against the Cavs, and I know that teams they're different. They're not too much different on paper, but like obviously they made a big jump this offseason. But they can compete. They can go, and when they're healthy, I don't see why they wouldn't give a team some fits in the playoffs. So. And why not, upset a team? If it's clicking, guys are playing well. Paul was playing his best basketball. He's only played 7 games this year, so he might be more freshened up than others when the playoffs come around. So I'd say that they are one of the biggest sleeper teams in the NBA, at least the biggest one in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I'd probably stamp them as the biggest one in the whole entire league. I mean, I think injuries always kind of make the sleeper because, this team kind of sunk in the standings a little bit. Obviously, in the Magic's case, they stayed exactly where they were at, which is kind of crazy. But I think when it comes down to the postseason, we always look at the X's and O's, right? You always look at who's guarding who. And I think in terms of Paolo being 6'10", Franz being 6'10", and then having Goga Bitadze, you put that up against the Cavs, where they have the traditional 4-man being 6'11" and the 5 being 7 feet tall, and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I think they match up well with them. You put them up against Boston, who does play a 5-out style kind of an offense, and it is going to be a lot harder to guard Kristaps Porzingis compared to Jared Allen. But you can still go somewhat small and put Paolo on Kristaps potentially and still come away with some wins in the match.
They would have to play around with those lineups like that against a team like Boston, but they have the people, they have the personnel to do that.
If you want a guy with more foot speed at the 5, put Wendell Carter in there. Like they have.
That's what I'm saying. They have depth. They They got pieces they can just plug in for certain matchups or whatever it may be.
And that's what makes them pretty appealing to me when I just look at the rest of the East. Where like you would put Cleveland, New York, and Boston ahead of those guys, sure, because that's literally who's above them in the standings. But we know if we see a playoff series, let's say they finish at the 3 seed and they play Milwaukee, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee will more than likely be favored going into that series.
Of course.
I can see that because of the name.
Because they have bigger name players, and of course, yeah.
I get that. And that's exactly why that Orlando fits the bill for a dark horse team that could go in and thump the Bucks or go in and thump New York if they end up
even with a high seed, they will be considered underdogs in any series that they go up in. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, hey, healthy. Again, Paolo looks like he showed no rust, and I love the point you made about him being more fresh than guys that have already played 30-plus games at this point in the season. He could just roll into wherever the hell they got to play, wherever the hell they match up, no matter where they fall, and he can just ball out. Like now, the matchup, if the playoffs started today, would be Indiana. I would take Orlando.
I would take Orlando over Indiana. Easy.
So, I feel pretty good about what Jamal Mosley's done. I feel good about how Paolo will probably look even more sharp.
Yeah.
Come April or come early May, if they're playing that long, it's Orlando Magic. I didn't think I'd spend the first 12 minutes talking about the Magic, but
here we are. They deserve it. They're looking good.
Shout out to Jamal Mosley, keeping those guys under reins to still maintain this 4 seed out east. It's a weaker conference, but it's hard to miss out on your 2 best players and still keep your head above water. So,
yeah, got to give them credit. They're building something special down there.